Hello, everyone. And that was the bell to start us off. I think that was Dub's computer.
I think it
Hello,
was.
everyone. And we are live from EULAR, sort of. That's not really Germany behind me, but we are simulating it today. My name is Tiffany Westrich-Robertson. I am the CEO of the International Foundation for Autoimmune and Autoinflammatory Arthritis, AiArthritis for short. A person living with the diseases myself. Primary diagnosis is non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis. There's Behçet's syndrome, like syndrome on my chart, and many other things. But that's kind of a good start in this topic we're going to do today, which is about precision medicine, and we're so complex. I have friends here, so let's say hi to Deb and Patrice. Hey, ladies.
Hello, my name is Deb Constien. I am here in Wisconsin, joining you guys as well. And I am a person with RA. I've had RA since I was 13 years old, amongst several other comorbidities. And yeah, happy to join this conversation.
So my name is Patrice Johnson, and I live in Northern California. I have had RA or something along those lines for about 9 years. And like Deb and many of us, I have a few wow.
That word.
I didn't even finish my glass of wine yet. Morbidities.
I have a large pour tonight.
We'll explain that in a minute.
So we've got it all covered.
Yes, we're good.
But yes, and thank you very much for having me.
All right. And so what are we doing here, and why do we have wine? And why is Germany in my backdrop? So as we said, we are tuning in, quote unquote, from EULAR, E-Congress Scientific Meeting 2020. And that stands for the European League Against Rheumatism. Every year, our organization attends both of the major scientific conventions that happen, one in Europe. This is the one in Europe, and one that happens in the United States, which is by the American College of Rheumatology, or the ACR. And both now, ACR is later in the year, have been pushed online because of COVID-19. The good news for us as people living with the diseases, as we do not have to run through the halls and watch all of the sessions in 4 days. We have until September 1st. So we thought, what a great idea if we pace ourselves and watched in some of the sessions online together, and then we do some research review. So we've been doing that for a while now, right, ladies?
Yeah, it's been since early June.
Yes.
Yeah. And Patrice, just out of curiosity, because you were telling you got a text message from you today saying, wow, I rewatched something from day one and it was amazing. I understood everything. And so why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
This was, or would have been, my first time going to this conference live in Germany. But of course, like you said, it was canceled. So now we see everything online. And when they opened it up for us, which was early June, I think, I watched the first couple of the sessions and I thought, oh boy, I'm really, really lost here. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So over the past couple of weeks, before we have done these shows, I decided to review some of the sessions, and it's just making so much more sense to me. And then earlier today, I reviewed the open plenary session, and it was so fascinating and even better than the first time. So.
And I love that.
I do too.
That. Yeah.
I feel like part of that is if you've tuned into any of these, we've done live sessions every Tuesday. So they will live here, and they are sort of our overview, where we have you as a discussion. But prior to that, throughout June, we also have 4 debriefs. And so there's a lot of learning curves, I think, that has come along. And we like to, which you'll notice today too, we like to take time to explain, because while Deb and I have been, old experts at this now.
Yeah. We're roomies at all these conferences.
Not everybody, like Patrice, has been to these scientific sessions, and they are not designed for patients. They are designed for doctors and for researchers. So we thought, which makes me circle back to what we're doing. We thought, as an organization whose mission is for persons living with these diseases to help others like us have a voice alongside other stakeholders as equals so that together we can solve problems that impact education, advocacy, and research. Who better to help you understand the research than the patients? And so we are alongside the other stakeholders. They just may not know we're at their table right now, but we are. We were. So we're doing this sort of as a pilot project, right, Deb? Is something we've talked about for 2 years now.
Yes, we have. And, it also doing everything we've done for this type of platform being virtual is a learning curve for how we're going to do it for ACR. And it's been, again, we're learning things that we're like, yep, that's not going to work. And that has been brilliant. And, all of those like shining moments throughout this whole process.
Yeah. So I do want to thank the people who have been coming along with us on this journey as we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, the lives versus some recordings. And then there will be a step 3, and we'll tell you how to sign up for that if you have not already at the end. But essentially, when we finish with the last of our wrap-ups next Tuesday, in July 2020, we are moving online to our new private AiArthritis Voices group, where you can have Patrice and myself and Deb and everyone else who wants to come along, as long as you're diagnosed with the diseases. It is patients only, or parents of juvenile. And we will be doing more intimate discussions about these, and you'll be able to ask a lot more disease specific, and we'll help you navigate through the research site on yourself and things like that. So, but today we are going to talk about precision medicine. Hot topic.
It is. Yeah, it really, really is. I mean, just the reoccurring themes and things that actually we've never heard before have hopped out at us. And, in our debriefs, we're circling around and the 3 of us are talking. We're like, man, we've never in all these years of doing this heard some of these topics before. So, but then some of them are just, man, this is right on target of what we've been listening to.
Yeah. And I think that we wanted to start by giving you an overview or definition of precision medicine versus personalized medicine, because a lot of people still, and it's sort of newer to be differentiating the terms. But a lot of people still do overlap them. But there is a strong movement to move towards differentiation. And that is mainly because of the science that goes behind it. So that as we are not only are researchers on the same the same vocabulary and speaking the same language as far as how they're going to delineate the research, but then also patients, as we start to understand research, we can speak also in layman terms and understand the different categories. So you may say, well, I've been doing my doctor has been doing precision medicine this whole time because it's all about me and the individual treatment. And that's what a lot of people think about. And that is not necessarily true when it comes to the science. So when we think of personalized, so think of yourself, you're a person, right? And you have all of your individual needs. So whether that is treatment, maybe it is exercise, maybe it is a diet. There's a lot of lifestyle elements that come with that. It could be, you also have to think about comorbidities. You have to think about the treatment, and do you want a pill or do you want a shot? And there's so many things that becomes very personalized, right? So you have to think about what's going to work with all of the external treatments. I like to think of it actually as like a big funnel. So let's say Deb and Patrice, we're all in this funnel. We're all together, and you're with us out there, you're listening, and we're all these big faces in a big funnel. And then as researchers start to look at all of us in this big funnel, and some things are working for some of us, we make it through the funnel. So, one of us might get left out and one of us might not. And that might be, we have a contradiction with a certain type of medication. Maybe it's that I won't do a shot. Not true, but let's just say I wouldn't. I mean, so we become filtering. We start to filter each other out. And this happens a lot if you ever have participated in a research registry. And we are actually building, our friends at Forward National Databank for Rheumatic Diseases have built us, and will be housing our own AiArthritis databank.
Shout out Caleb and Rebecca.
Shout out. And so, one of the things that's really important about the work that registries have been doing is when you submit your information about your preferences, about what's working for you, they are able to collect that de-identified, which means they don't know your name, but they are able to mark off all of those things and you become filtered. And so what ends up happening is as those new factors come out and they become predictive factors. So you could say, well, this treatment tends to work better for people who are of a certain age or who have a certain disease, or if somebody smokes or has different comorbidities, maybe they don't have as great of outcomes. So those are the kind of things that equate personalized medicine. So all of them, if you think of all of the factors that could go through that funnel until you're the last one standing, and that is going to influence your right treatment option. And that's personalized. Precision medicine specifically needs to include scientific biomarker. So think of your cells, your chemistry, your body makeup, not your exterior makeup, your physical makeup. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. What we've been learning at EULAR as far as we've talked about treat to target in the past, but treating to target specifically based not only on personalized, which would include other factors, but based on your genetics, based on your blood work, based on the things that are coming up as antibodies in your body, different markers in the blood that are showing that you are different than another group.
Yeah, like
well,
RA patients,
trying to.
that's exactly perfect. Like
Okay.
again, it's a way of delineating the differences between all RA patients and all XBA patients and things like that. Those are the things that are making you different, are all those markers.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we really wanted to dive in here, and we're gonna back up for just a minute before we go into that, because I wanted to ask, because one of the things I have struggled with for quite a while, ever since the beginning, is, well, you have negative blood work. There's nothing wrong with you, and that has become very limiting to my treatment. Have either of you had similar experiences? What are your experiences with blood work?
Patrice, do you want to go ahead first?
Sure. So in the beginning, which was about 9 years ago, when the blood work came back and I saw it online, it was positive, but I mean, when you look at the graph and like this is like
Normal.
and then it was here, but mine were there. And so when I went in to see my first roomie, he's now retired, and we discussed all that. And then over the years, it seems like it's more leveling out. And here I am 9 years later, and it's a little bit more evened out. So, I know we haven't discussed remission, but I don't know if I am in remission. I don't know if my medication is working so well that is a result of it. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and
Yeah, what it means is that or what it doesn't mean is that you're healed.
no,
Yeah, exactly. That's what it doesn't mean. I mean, it just makes you wonder, with the medication course that you're on, are
right.
you in remission related to the medication?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not healed.
I'm kidding.
I know you were, but you were making a point, and I understand that. Yes. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect. My journey is 37 years long, and I started my trigger for my disease activity was right after a foot surgery that I had. And while I was healing, life changed literally overnight because of opening up my foot and doing bunion surgery. So it's been interesting. Originally, all of my blood work went off the charts as far as my ANA and my CRPs and things like that. But I was at that point, at the age of 13, seronegative. So my RA factor, or my rheumatoid factor, your RF, was negative. And somewhere along all the blood work line, in 37 years, one time it showed up positive. So even at one point, they even talked about re-talking about if I had RA anymore, or if it was something different. And I was just like, okay, so I've had this disease for upper ends of 20 some odd years, and right now you're thinking about like re-questioning. I said, I clearly have like joint issues and damage. So I mean, just based on blood work, we need to dig a little deeper. So somewhere I was seropositive at one point, but most of the time it's been negative. Tiffany?
Well, like I said, I've never, ever in any capacity had positive blood work. And I did have at one point, I moved quite a bit. And this becomes a challenge um, when you're talking about how to treat a disease. And that's why this is relevant. We wanted to kind of get into the
Yes.
conversation because this is how, as patients, we can identify holes and problems
Mhm.
that need to be addressed. So as we're talking about our own treatments, it's important for us to understand where the research is going and these differences. And if it involves blood work, then that's something that we need to add to the conversation so we can start at square one. Now, in saying that, this all interests me tremendously because, as an
I
organization,
think
we
all three
are
of us,
very,
we're
yeah,
geeking out on
we
all three
are
of us are
because
geeking out on this.
as an organization, this topic is extremely important to us. The philosophy being, treat to target started as this idea of let's treat early. If we treat early, hypothetically speaking, a patient should be able to achieve better outcomes, earlier remission. And over the last decade, that's what's been proven. So now treat to target is moving more towards how can we predict disease? How can we diagnose disease? How can we identify risks for getting disease and prognosis? How well will somebody go? And that actually, I got them all right. I just looked down at a slide from this. So there were even different types of biomarkers that we're looking at when you're looking in someone's blood. So they've gone from this. We know if you treat early, it'll work, to now how can we maybe even prevent it from onset if you have certain characteristics in your blood and you have family history or things of that nature. So there's a lot of components to go to this biomarker. But what happens when you're a patient that doesn't have any blood work, positive blood work? What does that
Right.
mean? And as I was saying, I moved several times. And as a person that doesn't have a lot of inflammation or positive imaging, radiographic imaging or blood work, it definitely becomes a challenge because when I moved back to St. Louis, I did have a rheumatologist because I was doing better on my treatments tell me there's absolutely nothing wrong with you and denied me the treatments. And there was no talk about what we've learned at EULAR this time with maybe we should start pulling you off to see because maybe you're achieving positive results enough to start weaning yourself off. That was not the discussion. The discussion was there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not prescribing you medications.
Yeah, but
So
I mean
it
that's the
didn't
complexity
go
of
over well.
your disease type in particular. It's non-radiographic spondylar axpa. So
Right,
again,
with
it doesn't
negative blood
show up
works.
on yeah, it doesn't show up on x-rays.
Yeah,
So I mean, oh man, can you imagine how many people are just like you that went through that
a lot.
during,
I
I mean,
know there are. I know
yeah,
there are. And
yeah,
that's one of the reasons as an organization, we open the doors to people who are suspected of having the diseases as well.
yes,
Because we know that a large percentage of them will eventually become one of us. So
absolutely.
we want to help guide them because diagnosis, treatment, outcomes, all very important. So that's kind of what we need to think about as a patient. So where do we even fall in this predictive um, genre, I guess, if you will?
Yeah.
And one of the things that has come up, I was just looking at this right before I got on. It was a presentation by Bristol Myers Squibb, so the pharmaceutical company. We'll give them a shout out. I will go back and rewatch this because it was it was really interesting. It was really good, and it started talking about, where was it here? The insights into seropositive rheumatoid arthritis. And when you say seropositive, that means positive blood work. So it's funny because both of you at some point were positive and were negative.
Yeah,
But what studies were really showing in these is that we can start to create subgroups of patients. We can begin to understand when we're filtering through those registries, when we're talking about, well, I didn't have positive, and I don't know, maybe someday I will. I'm only 12 years in, I maybe,
exactly.
I we don't know. Um, but what tends to happen, and at least in seropositive rheumatoid arthritis, is the outcomes tend to be more aggressive disease if you have positive rheumatoid factor or positive ACPA, which is anti-citrullinated um, protein antibody. Sorry, I lost my. That's not one that just rings right off of the tongue there. But the bottom line is, again, these serological blood, these markers in your blood. So they're at least starting to understand that if these come up and they see these, then there is a good chance that they have an idea of how to use the different biologic mechanisms. You'll hear TNFIs, you got your TNF inhibitors, you have IL markers, and those all just mean they're different mechanisms of action. They're targeting different things. And so when we start to find biomarkers in a person's blood, then that is allowing researchers to put us in that funnel, go through the personalized part, and then get to the precision and say, all right, now based on all of these factors, what will match with this person's DNA, their genetic makeup, etc. So that was Deb and I already said we were going to get in our jammies and like do a Zoom party and recheck some of those out because it looked really, really great. But I wanted to turn it over to you two because I think that we can scale back and go into some of the treatment recommendations. So we know everything is moving towards making things personalized and precision.
Mhm.
And also, I think a really important revelation in the one or so major things that they changed when you're talking about at least rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. I thought maybe you both could talk about that.
Yeah, so that was actually something that we talked about in one of our earlier sessions in one of our debriefs. And they were talking about the difference in the guidelines that are out there. And they have these new guidelines that they've released in 2019. I say new, but again, a couple months old with COVID. Life kind of goes in a stream. There are new guidelines for RA that they've developed and for psoriatic arthritis. And Patrice, do you want to? I'll kind of talk about some of the overarching things at the end, but do you want to talk about some things that kind of jumped out at you? Patrice rewatched that session today, so she's got it fresh knowledge.
Yeah. Yes. So, like Deb was talking about the overarching principles. So, in 2016, actually, little history lesson, they were developed in 2010. They did an update in 2013, another update in 2016, and then, of course, last year. So, but anyway, originally there were only 4 overarching principles, but now they have added a 5th one. So I won't go into all of them, but the 5th one is like the medical and the societal costs, and that these also need to be factored in when your doctor is treating you. Yep. And so that was pretty interesting. And then also that RA and PSA are multi-symptom diseases.
Yeah.
But we've all known that.
I was just going to say, I mean, no shocker here to us, right?
To us, right, right. But it's being identified now as being multi-system diseases, which is huge. And then just the researchers and doctors are understanding the complexity of these diseases. Hello.
And I think the reason that it resonated with me most is because it was rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. And so it kind of at least moves us forward past the argument that doctors and researchers don't understand that these diseases aren't just arthritis. They do.
Yeah.
And they have.
Yes.
And so they understand these are full diseases, and the arthritis, these are some various serious forms of arthritis, but they do understand that they're full scope diseases, and it's right in the guidelines now. So,
okay, go back to Patrice, keep going. We got interrupted because again, you can see that the passion
we're excited.
Anyway, they also came out with 12 recommendations, and they also did the update last year. And I won't go over every single one, but they're going over that if you have persistent remission, that you could consider tapering. So
that's new. That's huge. That's huge.
And they're saying that target to treatment is aiming for remission and low disease activity, or I guess I should say. So very fascinating, very interesting. I love that they have updated these every couple of years instead of, going off of stuff that is 10 years old.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Changing. Our diseases are ever changing.
Indeed. And the knowledge level and what they're learning is changing significantly. So I 100% agree with you, Patrice. I'm glad it's getting the attention it is. I hope that it continues in other areas as well. But they're also talking about the stacking of medications. They're calling it stacking. So it is throwing a lot of medication at it. And they also give you guidelines of, what to start with, what to add, and then the next level of adding and the next level of adding. And then where do you start with the taper? And, their guidelines now is to get you off of medication, which is, that jumped out at Tiffany and I like, holy cow, they're
I had to take a double look when I saw it in the catalog. I went, does that actually say reducing treatment? Because every time we go to these, it's about, which does seem very ironic when you're saying stacking treatment off treatment, but the whole philosophy is if you address the multi-system nature, including all of the comorbidities that can come up with rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, and other diseases, which prior we always heard lupus. And lupus is one under our umbrella as well. So we love our lupus warriors. So it's not bad. It's just that was the only one that we ever really heard them say, let's consider this a complex multi-system disease. So it was something great for us to see that this is happening across the board. Go ahead.
Yeah, the one other thing that they did talk about within these guidelines is that there is shared decision making. So shared decision making means that the acronym is SDM, you might see, is it's between the patient and the doctor. The doctor may lay out all of the risks and benefits for different proposals, but it's really comes down to and the doctor can lay out what the treatment options are with knowing the risks and benefits, but then it's ultimately the patient with the doctor's help making those decisions. They're making it together. It's not just the doctor saying, this is your next line of treatment, and this is what we're going to add. It's, well, how do you feel about that kind of thing? So shared decision making is a great proponent that I think is magical in the world of medicine.
Well, I also think that that goes right back to what we opened with personalized versus precision medicine, because when we talked about personalized and having all of the components, all of the factors that go into decision making,
Yep.
that is personalized medicine. That's what your doctor is doing with you, right? And so that is the first step. In order to get to precision medicine, you must do personalized medicine. So that's how that factors in. I also just wanted to throw out that we saw that JAK inhibitors
Oh,
yeah.
were now proven, that the research has shown that they are equally as efficacious
yes.
as the others. So they were also added somewhere. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that they were added as an equal option.
Yeah. And I think that was more with the psoriatic.
Oh, I thought it was RA, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm looking back at my notes as well.
No, it's rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Okay. You found it? Okay,
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. But JAK inhibitors have been another thing that have been across the board. Just the more information, that's where the research goes. Now they're identifying that the research is in. And, here we are, that JAK inhibitors are as efficacious as the other IL medications and the TNF inhibitors and all of those things. So,
which
yes.
goes right into, now that we know, now that the research is done, that shows in the general patient population, because that's what clinical trials are today.
Yeah.
You must test in a large population that has certain features, certain components, certain biomarkers, where they have certain components that equate what they would say is your average patient. So a lot of patients can't get into clinical trials right now, but we still are assigned those same medications when we get off. The thing that's important about that, what Deb just said, is that research that they've been doing now the last decade is showing these are equal as their own mechanisms of action in a general patient population.
Yep.
Knowing that most of these treatments are only effective in 30 to 40% of that population, which is why now that we know at least they're safe and efficacious, it's time to figure out which of those subgroups they work best in. That's the next step.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where we're going next.
Yeah, and that's where the biomarkers play right into that.
There you go. So see, it's not that complicated after all.
It just takes time for all the research to catch up and, pour the information out. Because, as you read in the news, it's like, first indication is that the JAK inhibitors are really doing a good job. And then you'd have to complete the trials, and you have to complete the research, and that takes time. So,
yeah, it does.
And then, that's with any drug category and any medication in general. So absolutely.
Yeah. And that is also really important. Just when we talk about even juvenile versus adult, there were several sessions that we went to that talked about that as well, and some variants. And again, we've covered these in other sections. We want to just talk about really precision medicine and versus the personalized medicine. And I mentioned a couple of the biomarkers for rheumatoid arthritis that are predictors that the disease could be more aggressive, which is the ACPA in the positive rheumatoid factor. But there was a session on Still's disease. And again, I covered it in more detail in a different debrief. But I do just want to mention that they found some biomarkers that were similar, regardless if you were a juvenile with systemic juvenile idiopathic arthritis or an adult with adult onset Still's disease. And there has been much controversy over the years of, is this the same disease? Are they two different diseases? And then also you have arthritis right in the name of juvenile, but a large percentage of patients do not present with arthritis, which makes it more confusing. So they've been working really hard to figure out, are there any biomarkers? Are there any blood serum markers that are going to help us differentiate Still's, which often is confused as an infection. because it's high infection. I mean, it's a really high spiking fever and the fatigue and the myalgia, and patients are very ill and they end up at the hospital. So ruling that out, and they did a little bit of research and did find that there were a couple biomarkers that were prevalent in the range, showing that it is in fact one continuous disease. And that's important because when you're doing the treatments, they at least can now say things that are indicated for one can be used for the other, but they also are in that one great area where they can start to differentiate more, right? Because they've gotten to that point. And now it's about now we have to go forward and figure out which is going to work best in which subgroup. So it's just exciting that in all of these different disease groups that it's just coming together. And that's why at our organization, we have been focused on precision medicine for the last 3 years, and well before a lot of the organizations were. And we do have a project underway preparing patients for precision medicine, which involves education, just like we're doing today. Have fun with us and learn about it. But also then goes into the differences in the kind of trials, because when you do clinical trials for treatments that are about certain groups, you're going to need the certain groups to be in the trials. It's going to be different people. So that, that's something that I think it's great that we're going and learning about this now, so we can help patients prepare for that. What is next? What is next on our agenda?
Let's see.
The autoimmune versus auto.
Oh yes, I wanted to just touch.
I wrote it down.
Thanks. And we've talked about this before, and there is a page on our website. If you go to AiArthritis.org / I think it's what is AiArthritis, you will see a graph of basically a circle, and that circle overlaps in the middle. So if you kind of, like that. So whether you have an autoinflammatory disease or an autoimmune disease, not an immune disease, because people will say, well, I don't have autoimmune, I have immune. Well, there isn't, the word auto is in front of it. Okay. So they are both inflammatory, but of the immune system, there are two sides. So you have the autoinflammatory, and those are typically more rare. And then those are innate. So that means that they're more likely an inborn. They could be triggered by some kind of genetic mutation. Excuse me. So it is considered this this unknown trigger. Okay. But the adaptive side, so that's the other side. That's where autoimmune diseases come from. So in the autoimmune side, your body is reacting and adapting to an external reaction, an external, whatever that is. So there's something that's triggered it. And that is, I mean, even though we may not necessarily know what that is, it is.
My surgery, my foot surgery, that literally, I mean, things changed overnight. That was my trigger, surgery.
Yeah, for me, I was kickboxing, playing volleyball on the beach. I was so muscular and in great shape, and you would never think by sight that anything would have been wrong. And then I had to leave a job. I was vice president in an architectural firm, and they relocated like 2 hours away. I'm like, okay. So I went back to teaching. So it wasn't like losing a job as much as, I just wasn't there. And but I love teaching, but still that was stressful, going through a breakup with the guy I lived with. So I had nowhere to live. And because of going through the job situation, I had no money to move anywhere. So I literally was like homeless. My friend Letitia, shut up, she let me live on her couch for 6 months. So, it was, and that's when I had onset.
Stress. Holy stress.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a really, do you remember, Patrice, your onset?
I
was happening?
Of course, I'm kind of an anomaly. I was in my early 50s when I had onset, but prior to that, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. First, my mother died, and then
Stress.
not even 2 years later, my father died. So, I barely had time to grieve for one parent, and then the other one is gone. So I think stress, and then menopause. So, and
that hormonal factor in there too.
And because my father made me the executor of his estate, and that took 2.5 years to settle his estate.
You had work to do. Yeah, you not only, yeah.
You're talking tax information, you're talking attorneys, you're talking insurance companies, all the investments that they had. I mean, it was just like, oh, and then on top of all that, right? After my father dies, I'm the executor of his estate, right? I have say-so of everything. A family member decides to sue me for his estate. And it's like, so there's another 2.5 years in the California court system. I don't know if anybody is in California listening, if you know how complicated that this system of our courts can be. And of course, I was extremely naive about the court system. That's what prompted me to go to paralegal school, because I vowed another attorney, the defense, no, the other side, the plaintiff attorney is never, ever going to bully me again. But that's
awful.
So there was all these factors. But then, too, my rheumatologist, my very first one, said I was born with this. And I was like, what are you kidding me? Okay, first I was a promising ballerina. I mean, I had been picked up by a local company. I was on my way to stardom. Very athletic, like Tiffany. And then, of course, when the knee surgeries happened, there was my ballet career. Well, then what do? I get involved in Grand Prix horse jumping. So much to my parents' horror, because they figure I'm going to get injured horrifically. Had some really nasty falls. I mean, I had my horse fall on me a couple of times. So all these factors, did that, and having it inherited or born with it, did that all lead to me getting RA or whatever I have?
Yeah, see, I think the same thing. It can lay dormant until you have a triggering factor. And some people, it can be never activated too. So yeah, exactly. This whole autoimmune, autoinflammatory, it's just like, it's complex, but it is really interesting. And, the page on our AiArthritis page that we have related to those two things, it is super understandable for anybody. So if you want to really have another clear picture of it, please go to that page. What was the you've got the
well, it's
website.
AiArthritis.org is our website, and right at the top, what is AiArthritis? And it's right on the page. But I mentioned when I did my lovely diagram like that, there was a crossover, and I think that's really important. Well, there's a couple things now. You all just brought something back to the table that I think is worth mentioning. We're talking about precision medicine, and in particular, well, first, just that little crossover I said is one of the things that's been happening in research, and Deb and I have mentioned this for a couple of years now. I think it was in Amsterdam in 2018. We first heard it when we were at a lupus presentation, but they were talking about lupus, which is autoimmune.
Yes,
it has autoinflammatory characteristics that they're seeing, like these like dendritic cells or different cells, different parts of your body, different area, different things that's happening inside, different that are crossing over and triggering different areas of the other side of the immune system. And why that's really important to understand is that onset and that trigger. So if you have an autoinflammatory, an innate that is caused by a certain mechanism, and treatments have already been developed that work well with that, and then somehow your disease or your treatment is no longer working well, it could be because there was another part of it that was triggered. And I got to give a shout out to Saskia, and I just can't remember her last name off the top of my head, from ANCA, the European Network for Children's Arthritis, sent a research article today just on the autoinflammatory and the autoimmune crossover.
Oh,
and I know, I was like, you're not going to believe it. We're doing a presentation. We're going to talk about that tonight. And
yeah.
It's very complex. It's very scientific. So I do have to look through it. But
that's what these things, it's the matter of absorbing.
Yeah, it would be too much for me to read it off, but I copied and pasted some of the conclusion here. And again, it's very wordy, but they were talking about that. It's really important to note that what happens is when the inflammatory response goes haywire, which we've been hearing a lot when you're talking about COVID, right? That's something that keeps coming up in the news.
Storm.
The cytokine storm.
Yeah,
and it may not get to that level, but when your immune system is going haywire to the extent of it's somewhat uncontrolled for a certain duration of time. That's what they believe can start to trigger that other side. Makes sense to me.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And Patrice, even what you were saying, same thing.
Yeah, it was just one thing within a matter of, that was probably 5 years prior to onset.
Yeah.
So all those things happened. Not the knee injury and the ballet dancing and the horse riding.
But still, yeah, that's really interesting.
But one of, and then the only other point, again, I will dissect this and it's something that we can talk about in the future. If you have questions, you can send it and we'll have it analyzed by then or summarized by then. But the interleukin 1, which is IL-1, if you hear us talk about ILs, like we were talking about JAK inhibitors or the TNF inhibitors, those are all types of they're all biologics that target some kind of cell, something in your body, some kind of
system, right?
Part of your body. Okay. Yeah. And it's either inhibiting it or it's getting it going. But whatever it's doing, it's helping you out. And they're finding that the IL-1 is an inflammatory cytokine, and a cytokine is basically just a small protein. So when we're talking about these, the drugs that we take, they're targeting. That's why it's like hard to say what exactly. They're different proteins or different cells. There's different things. So, we'll go into more detail about that at a different time, but the cytokines are these small little proteins, and they're signaling the cells. So they're finding that these IL-1 that is involved in how your disease develops is something that is proving to be a very important biomarker when it comes to treatment. So that was interesting to me. So I definitely want to go back and look back at that one. So
send it on to me too. I would be interested in actually reading it too.
I will. Sure.
Yeah.
So again, it just goes to show you that all of this research is coming out, and that it does matter to know that my disease is autoinflammatory, my disease is autoimmune, and because that helps us tell our history, that helps us understand, wow, this was how this developed. And circling back to just quickly to what you both said, like, wow, was I born with this? How did this happen? One of the things that I think when we go and of course, Patrice, you're always welcome to come too. When we go and watch this other presentation that I want to watch the full thing
Jamie's
again.
In line.
Is it on the RA biomarkers in particular, they were talking about the prognosis or the predictive biomarkers, and what research has been working on for quite a few years now, but what they're talking about in biomarkers in particular is just the answer to what you said. That's what they're looking for. They're trying to find and say, Deb, before, when you were 11, did you have something in your blood that is going to be an indicator that you possibly could develop this? Not that it will, but if it's an autoimmune disease and there's an environmental trigger, and we know like smoking and several other extreme stress, and you've already had, then that's a great way of early detection.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yes.
you start
Yes.
having this weird joint pain or this weird fatigue and these low grade fevers or high, if it's autoinflammatory, those kind of signature auto features.
Right.
And you have the biomarker that's predictive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
So
again,
that's,
what research
and
is showing, yeah, the story that what research is showing is just, it's promising. And,
mhm,
you know, some of these things that we talk about, even with COVID, we keep talking about, you know, um, there's still so much more to learn. Can you imagine, like 6 months from now, how much more we're going to actually know about the disease? Because there's such ongoing and at such a rigorous pace. It's amazing. It's just amazing what research actually does spit out in the end. I mean, sometimes
mhm.
it takes a while to get there, but
Oh, well, yeah.
yes,
But it also, it really also, I hope, shows the patients who are tuning in again, whether it's live or on recording,
yes.
or if you come with us more and continue this journey, learning about research with us, if you'd like to learn more. It's so important for us to keep talking. It's so important for us not like to be part of these registries so that you're scientifically being part of the funnel that we
Yeah.
talked about, where we're funneling through and figuring out the personalized, then moving on to the precision, but
Mhm.
also just through the dialogue that we've had here today
Mhm.
and learning from each other. Like you all said, oh, well, I wonder if I was born with this. And I was able to come back and say, well, there's predictive biomarkers.
There's
And if you had,
possibility. Yeah.
so though by talking,
Yeah.
we learn
And be
from each
part of the,
other.
yeah, and that's why we want all of you out there that are watching this even after the fact, please be part of these
Mhm.
conversations. Share what your story is. You know, all those little questions that we've just been talking about, you know, our blood work, how did you present, and all of these pieces. Please be part of these. We want you to be part of these conversations with us, because we learn collectively from each other, because we are the experts out there.
And we often find these aha moments. Then we can go
Oh,
back to the other stakeholders and we can say, hey, there was something that came up that we don't think anybody's really addressing, or maybe we need to consider this in research. So it's amazing what the patient stakeholder can come up with if
absolutely.
we're all talking. But it does need people like Patrice, like Deb, like myself, to in some cases to go through the research first. It is very difficult. It is extremely scientific. But we're more than willing to help. But we think that this is very important and has become a very large part of who we are and our mission. But I just before we got one more little section here, we've got
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about well, I'm going to let Patrice lead it because Patrice was one of those things you rewatched today as well, I believe.
Are we going to the open plenary?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
This, when I first watched this back in early June, I just was like, oh yeah, you know, that's great. And, you know,
It's a learning curve. You're still on target with everything.
it is. I mean, you know, some of it was, it wasn't scientific, but it was what they are now discovering, what their plans for the future are, and how the scientific community, the research community, the patient community is now being asked to be involved in all these. So I rewatched it today. Actually, I was so fascinated with it. I just watched the whole thing. I didn't even take any notes. So then I went back and I did take.
I think you said your mouth was open this time because you were like, oh my God, this is all making sense.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about. You know, I didn't before. I just kind of went, but now I know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, you know, there were several people on this session. It was the head of EULAR. And all these people that were on there are researchers, yes, but they were very, very engaging. They didn't, you know, like talk all these scientific terms that lay people would not understand. So they, like I said, they were talking about, you know, what EULAR is all about, and then how they're moving forward in the future. And they want, and like our organization, they want all people to sit at the table virtually. So, you know, and they want to keep the patients involved because they know that's key to what they're working on. I know. I know. So just a little statistic, there is 1.3 billion people, I am assuming that they were talking worldwide, live with disability, but they didn't, you know, elaborate on that. And then, you know, one of them said normal life, but almost isn't good enough. And their motto is don't delay, connect today. So they want to get the patient research partner in this network. And this is what they're going to build on, which goes to their 3 pillars. And yes, here we are. So they're going to be establishing what's called the Virtual Research Center. And collaboration is their main key word on all this. And you know, it kind of like Tiffany said something earlier, why these diseases occur and how to prevent these diseases. So that's great. And then their Virtual Research Center is going to be based on 3 pillars. And the first one is the clinical trial design. The second is expert consultations, which I'm assuming they mean us as well. And the third one are training opportunities. And they define their future as prevention, remission, cure. Wonderful. Yes.
Very nice. Very nice, Patrice.
I did my homework.
But well, I mean, it's funny how like the time from, you know, like 2 months ago, roughly, to now, I mean, literally how much growth you've had and how much you've learned with all of this and going to the sessions with us and everything too. You know, I'm a dietitian by trade and I've had tons of science in my background and love research and getting my fingers into it. But, you know, not everybody has that.
I think that just going back to what we said at the very beginning is I think, Patrice, you're one of the things as we've been testing this, go with us, let us help you learn and navigate through this. We've done a lot of trial and error. I mean, we've never done this. Nobody to our knowledge has done this, at least not in the rheumatology community. So we've been sort of a lot of trial and error, but I can say, I think we're witnessing one success is if we take our time and talk through it and do just like you saw us doing today, where, you know, I might explain what precision medicine is versus a personalized, or, you know, we break stuff down. And then when you go back and you listen to it or you see it, you're like, oh, I got it. And so I think that's a success. I think
it's huge success. Yes.
If we're able to teach, then more people will be able to go and watch some of these. So I think that's just a huge success. And you did so well reporting that.
Because I'm a newbie at all this.
That's good. But now you're not. Now you're no pro.
And I'll be so prepared for ACR.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. There's a couple things that I wanted to point out. You mentioned the Don't Delay Connect Today. That is a program that they launched in 2018. And our organization happened to be in Europe with them when they launched it. Because they invited a couple of organizations. We gave a shout out last time we talked about this to Creaky Joints, holla, because we were the 2 from the United States that were non-European based that were invited. So we got to learn all about that. And Deb and I sat in a session in Madrid where the results, here we go about the results again, saw the introduction in 2018. And then last year we got to see some of the organizations from around Europe who went and did their own campaign. So the idea is that organizations go out and they creatively create campaigns that inspire getting into the rheumatologist to get that early, don't delay, connect today. And
it was all over Europe. I mean, all the different stakeholders. I mean, even down into Africa and Australia, and I mean, everywhere. So it was really interesting hearing all those groups present.
Yeah. So we wanted to just I was going to mention that anyway, so I'm glad that thanks Patrice for bringing that up. And then also Patrice, you mentioned patient research partners, and we can't, how can we have that phrase without giving a shout out to Martin DeWitt?
He is the like
He is
epitome.
the lead author of Patient Research Partner, which was defined by EULAR in 2010, and he is a dear friend of ours. So we have to give a shout out to Martin. But that is those that literally are patients that work as equals on the research team, and I know Deb and I have both been able to do that with Omeract, and then recently found out Patrice is working with on Omeract as well. So that is what a patient research partner is. They
Shared
utilize
decision
that
making in particular.
at Omeract. So yeah, we really were excited about the virtual research center. And one of the things I wanted to point out, Dieter Wick, who is the vice president, I believe, we met him. We met him in person. I met him a couple times through Martin, actually, but he was at the PARE meeting that Deb and I went to, where we saw the results of Dotale Connect today last year. And he is just very interested in collaboration, like Patrice said, but on an international scale. So even though when they initially said the virtual research center and all of the European organizations, he made an effort to say and international. And so we said I have it on my to-do list to email him and let him know how do we get involved.
Yeah, he approached us in particular. I mean, we were sitting in that that don't delay connect today session, and he came and approached us because Tiffany had spoken up and made a comment in the session, and he's like, you guys. So yeah, and I love that. So I'm not going to get into all that because Tiffany had told the story before, but it's just shows the traction we can actually have. And we've got several things to bring back up with him after he led several sessions here in EULAR, and again bringing up the topics that he wants to bring home with us. So
yeah, and I think that's the reason I wanted to kind of end with that. I know you still have to do one more thing on the dendritic cells.
I was going to wonder if you want me to do that. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, again, I watched it today, but whether we do that or not, we can put it off too, if you want.
Okay, well.
Right. Yeah, it's totally up to it, like timing and stuff like that.
Okay, well, we can add that to a future. It's more scientific, but so ending up with this conversation that we were just having, I think is a good transition, because now we have finished our next week. We have one more, right? Tuesday, I don't know what the date is, but next Tuesday will be our final go live to EULAR with us on Tuesdays.
On YouTube,
and on YouTube, and we will be covering pain. So it'll be a very, I think, a very complex but robust conversation. Hopefully, if you'll be able to tune in, and so that'll wrap it up. But then after that, we will be asking you to, if you haven't already, to sign up and continue this journey with us, as we will be taking it now from public to private. So we spent our time going through the sessions and really exploring them, and as you can see, deconstructing the information so that we can talk to you all about it. And now we're ready. So we do have an online site that is called AiArthritis Voices. .org. And if you are a person living with these diseases or a parent or guardian of a juvenile patient, please go to AiArthritisVoices.org, click that join button. And it does take a day or two, because we have patients who are reviewing the applications to ensure that we think that they are genuinely patients that are coming in.
Like, I love that you said that last time. You're like, and we don't want,
I call them looky-loos
that are just hopping in just to.
I just don't like the looky-loos.
Yes. No, and not about that.
And so too often what happens is when you're on a lot of sites, you just put in an email and boom, you're in. And and that means anybody could get in.
Yeah.
And we think that our voices are extremely valuable. The conversations we're having are extremely valuable. And we don't think that researchers or pharmaceutical companies, we love you, but
Yeah.
there's a
They're
place
all
for
part of-
that.
They know, yeah, they know that they're really not invited to be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
What we're talking about. They
No.
know that pharma, I mean, we've got relationships with many of them, and they know they are not, that's not where they belong.
Yeah.
And we've made that perfectly clear to them, because again, they'd love to be those looky-loos looking in on what the conversations we're
But
having.
the beauty is that
Yes.
we also is because we will disseminate the information
Yes.
back. We will give, overviews of what we're learning, but it's not the
Right.
right place. So we want patients to feel, people living with these diseases to feel safe and private in this community. And we have a go to EULAR with us group inside there. So all of the videos that we've been recording will be in there, but then we have new conversations. We'll be having watch parties. Oh, we never said why we had the wine. We always, when we are at the
That's good.
actual conventions,
I'm
at the
halfway
end of the
down.
day, we wind down, usually with a glass of wine. If
Mine's
there's
empty.
there's somebody with us or ice water or whatever is but we
Food,
always
yeah.
wind down with something and do our debrief. So that's, we will try to keep it as real as possible. So within that group, we will also have some watch parties, and we'll go further into one-on-one conversations with you. We have directions on how to navigate conferences. So we'll be doing it all of August. So it's free. It's no charge. You just hang out with us and learn. And I think that's the most important part. And then based on what we figure out works the best this time, we're going to implement at the ACR, at the American College of Rheumatology, in November, and you can help us know what is working best. So that's kind of exciting in itself, just to be part of the first time that anybody does
Hey,
this.
Tiffany, will you put the link to AiArthritis Voices in the chat
will.
feature of the YouTube video so people know exactly how to get in? Because I know that personally I had a little trouble linking
Oh,
in.
I know what you mean. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just want to make sure that there's an exact link to that so we can make sure we get everybody in that, again, collectively with all those different voices. Patrice has been super anxious for this opening up, and it's launched a week ago, and we're so excited to have Patrice part of this as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real fun spot to, share your voice and share everything perfect. I just saw it pop up. You are so good. Yes.
I only had 2 sips. So
Yeah, and I've had as y'all saw, that was a big pour, and this is
I need a refill, but
yes.
So, but
perfect.
that's it. That's a wrap for this week. So, for those of you who are able to tune in, great. If you have any questions about anything that we covered, you can definitely either send us an email at info@aiarthritis.org, or send us a message on any of our social media platforms, which is AiArthritis. Or again, join the AiArthritis Voices community and
Better way to do it.
us.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that's it for us. We are signing off, and until next week.
For pain. And actually, you
pain.
guys are going to want to be there because they say it's all in the head, but it's all related to the brain. So, giving a precursor keys to bring you in. It's great information. You guys will love it.
yeah.
All right. See you all next week.